Hello, hello, hello. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you on a Monday, first day of August, August 1st. My sister is celebrating a birthday today. I'd like to say happy birthday to her and anybody else that might be celebrating her birthday. I will also be coming to you daily, probably Monday through Friday, with new topics in education because we're getting ready to go back into the schools. And just want to give my opinion on a few things that are happening. I pulled up some very interesting articles that I think you'll be probably interested in. So just don't forget to clue in. I'm usually doing about 3:30 every day, Monday through Friday. And I would just like to have you on if you would like to, just see what's going on. Today I'm talking about disciplinary policies in schools. Disciplinary policies in schools. And this can be a very, very touchy subject, especially working with children of color, African Americans and brown children, Hispanic children. And there has basically always been what would you call it, a question as to why, children of color are usually disciplined a little bit more than any other students within a particular school. And it's very noticeable in schools that are that are integrated, heavily integrated. My particular school, I'm not saying that my children were disciplining more than anybody else in my school, but my school had at least about 60 or 50 different cultures going on in the building from kindergarten all the way to eighth grade. And it was a magnet school, so it did pull from all areas of the city. And these children were basically, placed in these different classrooms where you sat as a teacher and as an educator, you looked up and you had at least, 30 different cultures, from Nigeria, from Jamaica, India, Korea, China, everywhere. My children came from everywhere. They came from everywhere. So it has been always questioned in I would say, the last 10 or 15 years as to African American children or children of color being discriminated against because of who they were or how they performed and what the disciplinary issues dealing with children of color. Um, the article that I did read, it stated that the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights suggests that Black students face disproportionately higher rates of suspension and expulsion. That means these children are basically, they have one infraction, they're suspended. Two infractions, they're basically kicked out of that particular school sometimes, which is not good also. And for instance, K through 12 schools, Black male students make up only about 7.7% of enrollees, but account for over 40% of suspensions. They're suspended. Okay, that's not good. That's not good. It's interesting because I'm working also with a group as to how schools are being graded with Chicago Public Schools on a part of that committee. And I have found out that unfortunately, if a teacher does not know how to manage students in her classroom, if she feels somewhat intimidated, and that could be a teacher of any color, okay, any color. And if she feels intimidated and feels threatened by the children that are sitting in front of her, she could easily fall into the realm where every time Johnny looks left and she say look right, she sending him to the office, and a lot of times those sometimes are some children are a little bit more aggressive than other children. It possibly comes from it comes from I'm sorry, it comes from a particular household that allows children to do this. And I'm not saying that the parents set the children up for this, but at the same time, what ends up happening is that if the child is coming from a household where they are allowed to express themselves verbally, and there's not necessarily any kind of, I'll say, respect attached to the aggression. In other words, you can be aggressive and not be respectful. So to children that to parents or to adults, or how they respond to adults. This is what we're talking about. And those particular infractions can easily put a teacher to the point where she doesn't want to be bothered with a particular student, and she's sending them to the office, sending them to the office. This is not always good, because unfortunately, if you see a particular child, a child comes into your room in September, and the child has a, what would you call it? We try not to label children, but sometimes we do have within schools. We'll label children from grade to grade. Oh, you don't want that one. He's something else. Blah 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 blah. That's not really good. That's not really fair to the child, because the children respond to adults differently, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. I have had children that I was told that they are difficult to work with, and I'm old school. I said, "What makes the child difficult to work with? What makes the child difficult to work with? I'm the adult, they are the child. That's it. There's no togetherness in it. I'm not trying to be. I am a friend, but I am an adult friend. I am an adult person that cares for children. So I'm going to reach my students that type of way. I don't care whether they're in preschool. I don't care whether they're in kindergarten. I don't care whether they're in 8th grade. In fact, I was during my career of teaching, I was taken out of, I was doing walking reading or something like that. And one of our upper grade teachers had retired, and they needed somebody to go into the classroom and sub. And it was like about a week's worth of information. It was like a week's duty. And of course, who did they pick? Me. I looked up, and I went from 2nd grade to 8th grade. 8th grade, I was in this 8th grade classroom, and it really wasn't bad, because the students already knew exactly what they were supposed to do. They were doing doing walking classrooms, or they were going from classroom to classroom for reading, social studies, science, and math, and so forth. I had been in the school over about 10 or 15 years by that time, so I knew the children. And the children knew me, which was a good thing, which was a very, very good thing. But my principal, she did approach me. She said, "Aurelia, I need you to go into this class, this 8th grade classroom, until the new teacher we hired is coming in, and they won't be here until next week, because they have to finish up some stuff and whatever." So I went into the classroom. It was interesting, because I saw a lot of my former students, which helped a whole lot. I saw a lot of former students, but at the same time, I saw some children that were new to the building, and they had just come in the 7th or 8th grade. I had 8th grade, but they had just come in the 7th grade, so they did not know me. And I recall one day, some of these same children that did not know who I was, basically trying to get very aggressive and just basically let me know that they were not to be messed with. Okay, well, they had their own agenda, and so did I. So it was interesting. But the majority of the children in the classroom did know me, at least 75% of them, 80%. And then that other percentage, they had heard about me. So they really didn't want to tangle with Miss Davis. Okay, well, to make a long story short, what ended up happening is that one particular day, there was 2 young men, and it was a set of brothers, and I don't know why they put them both in the same classroom anyway, but they had a tendency of feeding off of each other and causing havoc and causing problems and whatever. I am not the person to get all excited and just go into a frenzy, and I don't do that. I sit there, I analyze the situation, try to see exactly what's trying to happen, and what the children are trying to do. And then I approach it as the adult that I am to talking to children who they are. So it was interesting, but they kept pushing me and pushing my buttons and pushing my buttons. So I told during homeroom time, I solicited two of my former students. You know, I'm not going to name their names because they're Johnny and Betty. Okay, I solicited Johnny and Betty. I said, Johnny and Betty, and I just sat in the teacher's chair, and I said, Johnny and Betty, I said, I had you at what grade? And they said, oh, Miss Davis, we had you at second grade and third grade, and we really had a good time and whatever. I said, so you know how I handle things, don't you? They say, yeah, we sure do. We sure do. You know, I said, well, you know what? What I would like for you to do is take these two young people here, take them out into the hallway and tell them the type of person that I am. And all the other children said, oh, you know, they got all excited. But my two former students took those particular individuals out into the hall, and I could just see them shaking their heads and whatever. You don't want to mess with her, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't say that to say that I'm a very hard, strict disciplinarian, but what I do is I establish the what would I call it? I establish an environment that is to be respected in my classroom. And like I was talking about a few days ago, the first day of class, you have to establish that environment. And the thing about it, you have to be consistent with it also from year to year, month to month, day to day, hour to hour. You have to be consistent about who you are, what you're about, and what you're going to take and what you're not going to take. And that is established from the administrators all the way down to your students, from the administrators to your students, even to your parents, letting your parents. I never did get to the point where my parents saw me one way and then I appeared another way. They knew who I was. The way I talked to them was the way I talked to their children. And it was in a very respectful way. If there were some concerns, I would let them know about my concerns. I would let them know about the problems I was having with the child in a very professional way. But at the same time, I would let them know. So in the meantime, I said that to say all of this, that as an educator, you have the right to set that environment in your classroom. And if you set the right type of environment in your classroom, you wouldn't have you wouldn't be sending 5 and 6 children to the office on a daily basis. You shouldn't even be sending 2 or 3 children to the office weekly, because when they're in the office, they can't learn. They can't learn. And sometimes you just have to be real careful, because sometimes they'll do it on purpose, so they do not have to go into your classroom and learn. Okay. I did send one child one time, and I don't know what was going on with me. I may have had a bad day or headache or a bad hair day or something, but I came in that morning and the child was ready for me and I was ready for the child. I turned around and took them downstairs. I said, I need such and such to sit in the office for at least 2 periods until I get everybody else together, because the child was disrupting the other students. And so I, just to deal with him and handle the other kids, that was not going to work. So I sent them down there. And then, of course, after I got back upstairs to my other children, I sent down some work. I sent down some work and said that he could not come back to my classroom until he had finished those assignments. I had never did that before with this particular child. And we were basically into like the 6th or 7th, I think it had to be about February. So I had tolerated everything up until that particular point in time. And then in February, something must have happened to him or something, but he just went totally left. And it was something that I could not deal with at the time. So I basically did send him to the office for a minute. I told the principals, I said, I just want him to sit here, because I'm going to go back and during my prep time, I'm going to go back and take care of this situation, which I feel is very important, because I had established a relationship with this child. I have established relationships with all of my children. By October or November, it is good to establish individual relationships with your children, and then you'll know who you're working with. You'll know who you have in front of you. They're not going to always have a good day either. And you have to be compassionate enough to understand. And a lot of times, unfortunately, because we're not coming from the homes that these young children of color are coming from. We cannot relate to the issues that they might have, which is bad, which is not good at all, which is not good at all. And so you have to establish that relationship. I mean, get as much into their life as you can. You need to find out if there's two parents in the household. You need to find out how many other people live in the household. You need to find out if it's a blended family. Are they being raised by their grandparents? Are they being raised by their mom or sister or aunt or uncle? Because those kind of situations do exist. And those kind of situations can create disciplinary problems in your classroom, which creates disciplinary problems in your school. In your school. And so I said that to say a lot of children deserve a second chance. Now it gets to the point where you cannot handle it. Then there basically needs to be some resources where that child can get whatever he needs in order for him to be an accomplished adult, or to feel good about himself. You're talking about low self-esteem. You're talking about children coming from houses where they've been abused, verbally abused, physically abused. And so when they come to school, most likely, of course, they're going to act out as to what they received at that particular house. Or we talk about bullying. A lot of times things are not happening at home, but they're basically happening in the building. And so do you turn around and you look at both children that are the two children that might be involved in the bullying? Let's just take that as an example. Say, for instance, it's a white child and an African American child. If something is going on between them, both of them should be questioned as to what is going on. Both of them should have to be answered to. In other words, they need to make answers for the questions that you have. Both children. You may do it separately, but everybody involved needs to be questioned. Another thing they stated is that, because this particular article came from the civil rights, it says many people believe some teachers apply the rule of discipline in a discriminatory way and contribute to what has been termed the school to prison pipeline. Wow, I've heard about that. The school to prison pipeline. It's just Leanne, it's where most of our African American young men in prison. And how many of them started in that classroom? Or how many of them that weren't even able to get through school? How many of them were even able to graduate? But the aggressiveness you see, you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know if it's been taught. But at the same time, you just cannot. It's a child is a child. Don't treat them like an adult. A child is a child. And suspending him or expulsion basically does not give that child the tools they need in order to be an accomplished citizen. I'm using that word, an accomplished adult, an accomplished citizen. That means somebody that has some worth. Okay. And so the civil rights organizations are saying this is what they see. So I do believe within the last, oh my goodness, I say the last 6 or 7 years, or even the last 10 years, that schools are starting to change the method as to how they treat discipline within their buildings. Our particular building, we had discipline. There was a discipline policy that went from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. The whole building was under one particular discipline plan, and that worked and of course, all of the teachers had to sign off on it in order for it to work. But it did work. And we found that as children got a little bit more sophisticated, we had to get sophisticated with how we disciplined them. And it was never, ever our principals got on board, and they said, the office is busy, and you're going to send 5 or 6 kids to the office to just sit there. They're not even being disciplined. Okay. I can understand fighting or whatever, blah, 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 whatever. And we got to the point where teams within our particular grades, we decided to, take Johnny over to your room for a few minutes. He's having some issues today, and so on and so forth. So we would let the children go back and forth, or either give them something to do. And you will find out that if you come up with some creative things for that child to be a part of, or watch the triggers. Watch the triggers. Children, just like adults, just like children and just like adults, triggers can set off a whole slew of things that may not be very positive. So we started working as teams to see exactly what kind of children we had in front of us, and what some of the issues that they were having, and how we can combat those issues and keep those issues out of the classroom. And we were successful with it. Not everyone, but we had a lot of success. And it was interesting because at one time, schools or classrooms or teachers within buildings were very particular about other individuals talking to their children. Okay, don't say anything to my class, whatever. We wiped that out. When someone would ask me, how many children do you have, Miss Davis? I said, I have 652. So that means I was able to discipline from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. That means every child in that building belonged to me. Every child in that building belonged to every teacher. They belonged to the clerks. They belonged to the assistant teachers. They belonged to the gym teachers. Every child. We were one big family with 650 something children. And we did what we needed to do in order for our building to be progressive and for learning to take place. We didn't have time for discipline. We taught and we taught hard, and they learned, and they were successful in what they did. It was interesting because as time went on, we found out that we found out that we had to sign the parents onto things, because unfortunately, sometimes parents have a tendency of interrupting what might be going on in that particular building. And parents have to be very careful, because the way your child acts at home may be something totally different than how your child acts in the classroom. How the child associates or socializes with other individuals and other children. And we know there's a lot of peer pressure from kindergarten all the way to through high school. The peer pressure is heavier than what the teacher is doing. So these types of things, we had to let parents know how to follow up, and basically let them know. First of all, they were very aware of our discipline problem. We had a school-wide discipline problem. We had a school-wide discipline practice, school-wide discipline program. And your child coming into that particular building, all the parents were sent home with a sheet talking about how we would measure the discipline problems, and what the children would most likely would happen with the children, and so on and so forth. And at this particular time, unfortunately, if you didn't want your child to be a part of this particular program, then you had the right to take your child out of that particular school. Hard, isn't it? But that's what we needed we had the kids 6 hours a day. What made you think that we won't be able to? We had to have some discipline management in place for these children to accomplish what we wanted them to accomplish. So we had quite a few parents that took the kids out. They took them out. And being a magnet school with a waiting list, 5 more came in, and they had to sign off on it too. They had to sign off on it. It was nothing that we negotiated. And then our teachers were told, do not wait till the thing gets totally out of hand before you're connecting and talking with the parent. And what I did, I had a tendency that if I wanted to talk to the parent, the child was right there. So I was talking to the parent and the child at the same time. And I would express it would be a 3-way conversation. Okay, Johnny, you did such and such and such on such and such day. Why did that happen? And if he couldn't come up, some kids would come up with some real answers, and then some didn't have an answer at all. I just felt like it. I said, well, was that the right thing to do? And then, of course, so we're having this three-way conversation, the teacher, the parent, and the child. We're sitting there and talking about the issues that this child might be having. And then when sometimes if you delve into it deeply, you'll find out that the student is having some issues in other areas too that will cause him to act out in one way or the other. So when it finally comes down to it, my personal opinion, and I think that there should be a discipline plan for the whole school, the whole school. Uh, all the teachers should take on every child in that building to promote, positive discipline, so on and so forth. Um, the principals and the parents, of course, need to sign off on everything, and there needs to be support so that if I send somebody to the office for whatever reason and everything, I need you as there needs to be somebody. And what ended up happening, even though our principal and our AP was busy with other things, the clerks would take it on. Okay, so and so sit over there on on the bench. They would take it on. We were just that equal equal opportunity employee. Everybody was on the same page to do what we had to do, and it worked. It worked. I loved my school, and the way we measured and made things happen allowed me to be who I am today, the educator's educator, and I was successful. I was successful because I never did dread going into my building because there was going to be so many fights or something like that. No. We didn't have that. We didn't have that at all. And we got together as a group, and as the administrator said, we're not getting ready to suspend anybody, because when they're suspended, they can't learn. Now, when it came down to some very dire situations of children, even not that we even had children with guns and things like that. But one time there was a child that did bring a gun to school. Of course, that's, no tolerance, no tolerance. But sometimes you have to even delve back into that as to why it got to even to that level. And then you wanted your students to be able to talk to you about anything. My children were coming to me about anything and everything. He looked at me wrong. He took my eraser. He dropped my pencil, everything, and just hoping to get everybody else in trouble. I said, just pick it up and keep on going. So I didn't make little issues into big problems, which kept my classroom calm and whatever. And then we as teachers, we had a tendency of balancing each other out. Do you need a break? Okay, yeah, let me take them outside. Take them outside. You get you a break. You've had a rough day or hurried morning or whatever. Let's take them outside. So I believe it says also that ending this, it says in 2018, the Federal Commission of School Safety, which was established in the wake of the school shootings in Parkland, Florida, was tasked with reviewing and possibly rescinding the 2014 guidelines. The 2014 guidelines, the U.S. Department of Justice, Department of Education, issued guidelines for all public schools on developing disciplinary practices that reduce disparities, okay, and complied with the federal civil rights laws. The guidelines urge schools to limit exclusionary disciplinary tactics such as suspension and expulsion. They also encourage the adoption of more positive interventions. This is what we're talking about, what I've been talking about for the last 10 to 15 minutes, such as counseling and restorative justice strategies. Oh, wow. I'm going to have to do something on restorative justice strategies. I didn't find out about the restorative justice strategies until after I retired. And I heard the word and somebody was talking about it, and I have not delved into it completely to the point where I know exactly what it is, but hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I'll talk about it. You as teachers, you just know what it looks like. But I would just like to go a little bit into it a little bit, because it might be something that we've already been doing, we used to do, and they just put a new name on it. Let's see what else it says. Restorative justice strategies. In addition, the guidelines specified that schools could face a loss of federal funds if they carried out policies that had a disparate impact on such racial groups. So they're basically saying, the Justice Department is saying that you just cannot pinpoint all of the African American or the brown or the Hispanic children in your building and suspend them, okay? Because it looks very suspicious and it's really not fair. It's really not fair. So As time goes on, we're hoping that these things are going to be something that schools attack and put in place immediately, because as these children start to go back into the classrooms full time through after COVID, they are still having some issues as to how they behave in the classroom, how they respond to adults, and so on and so forth. Some children have been through some very dramatic situations with losing individuals through COVID, and just parents losing jobs, and just you name it, they've been through. We all been through it. So that the children are not going to come in unhassled. That's what I'm going to say. They're going to be still hassled, and it's going to go across color lines, because everybody was in the same, and it was in the same classroom. Everybody was in the same house. Okay, so it doesn't make a difference what color or how much money your family had. These children are going to come back, and they are going to need all kinds of extra resources in order for them to be accomplished adults, and for them to have success in schools. So if you like what I talked about, feel free to go over to my website, aureliadavis.com. Drop me a note. I would really love to talk back with you. But at the same time, this is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator. I see you this afternoon. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.